All right. It says that we're live on studio page. Okay, yep. We are live on YouTube right now. Hey everybody,
Hey
how
there.
are you all doing? Prepared to stream back.
Welcome to
Yeah,
welcome to our weekly shenanigans, where we talk about current events and then try to discover what implications these serve. Such as, for example,
we're gonna
what are
put
the moral and ethical implications that will be discussed for all time related to King What's His Face the Third being diagnosed with an undisclosed variant of cancer.
King Charlemagne the Third of 2024.
It's he's king something. All I know is that Ding Dong, another royal, is probably gonna die. Well, the actual statement from
King
Buckingham Palace
King
is that they
King
seem to
Cancer.
be kinda confident in his ability to not die.
No, he's King Cancer.
God damn it! Why didn't that occur to me?
I freaking don't know, but it's the obvious name for it's the obvious nickname. But yeah, I absolutely love it when especially the heads of first world nations get cancer because it puts them in just the fucking perfect prisoner's dilemma for people like that. There are multiple cures for cancer that exist, and you are deliberately keeping them out of the white market in order to necessitate a demand for cancer treatments so that you can ensure that GDP continues to go burr. But if you take any of them, then it becomes obvious to everybody that they exist. So it becomes common knowledge that there just are cures for cancer and they're being kept out of the hands of most people. And if people figured that out on a mass scale, well, I think that their lives would probably end pretty shortly after that anyway. So, you know, do they just die and wait until, several generations after their death before everybody figures out what they were doing and they can at least live the rest of their lives in peace? Or do they take the cure and then all of them are fucked?
It's a very interesting situation that they've put themselves in. We didn't do it; they did, and that's arguably what makes it funnier. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
but that's the sort of situation King Charles is dealing with right now, and that's the kind of drama you could base a movie off of. One that would be worth watching too.
I haven't I don't know if there's any even movies worth watching anymore. Just the absolute state of
Oh,
entertainment. I mean, I suppose that
well, I
the
don't mean from Hollywood, obviously. I
yeah,
mean Hollywood's dead. I didn't mean from Hollywood. Just like you could make a really good movie out of that. Like the plot. That's the plot of a movie.
yeah, I'm probably just reading too
Sorry.
much.
Continue.
Yeah, sorry, I was probably just reading too much into it. My thinking is just that cancer's been cured for a very long time, and there have been multiple different cures. I want to emphasize just for people that we know that cancer isn't one disease or caused by one thing. It's a suite of disorders that are all characterized by the same condition of a malignant tumor that grows exponentially by consuming resources from nearby cells, namely glucose. However, it is because of this that actually one of the multiple cures that exist has been discovered, which is that if you lower the amount of glucose that your body produces, you can actually starve a cancer to death. Basically, just go on a strict keto diet, and it's not a guaranteed cure, but it's definitely going to mitigate your the effects of cancer very, very significantly.
Yeah. Well, I'm not just responding to that's March Scarf, but I'm not exactly sure how you would want me to pronounce your new username. Uh yeah, it's not I don't know. Like it's something that would be interesting to think about. Like it's kind of like Saw meets House of Cards. That's how I'd picture it. Which honestly, just because of the fact that it would be politicians getting fucking brutally killed, sounds like it would be awesome. But hey, everybody who's just joining.
They would have to.
But anyway, what were we gonna say, Heretic?
I was
Sorry.
just going to remark, like, yeah, as you were saying earlier, like King what's his face? I know it's King Charles, but really I don't care enough. Is in an interesting position where he has to admit that the cure for cancer not only exists but has existed for a very long time. And what's he going to? What's the next move there? Does he just die?
Basically, he's just gotta be like, well, I fucking, I gambled and I got, you know, Orange Jesus favored me too many times, but eventually my luck was gonna run out. That's how he's got to take. That's how he's got to approach this. Because if he does anything about it, he's dead anyway. And however he dies after that, it's gonna probably be way worse than just letting the cancer kill him.
Well, at least he has one consolation prize, which is he got the rare privilege of being able to outlive the freaking queen. I swear, like I was a very strong part of me was convinced that she was going to outlive me, and I plan on living forever.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm not surprised by that, but at the same time, it's like it doesn't seem like I was expecting to hear it either when it happened. I mean, she was in her mid 90s, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a fairly reasonable time to expect someone to die from old age. But yeah, I don't know. It seems still, I just the idea of the Queen of England being dead still seems kind of weird. I think it's just because of how long she was around.
Well, I mean, she was around when both of us were born, and she was queen then, so it's like,
But yeah, I mean, it was only a matter of time before somebody left the curtains open and she accidentally walked into the sunlight.
it was only a matter of time, I suppose. Or maybe it's just like the death jab had infected so many people that there was too much poisoned blood for her to be able to sustain herself on.
That of freaking yeah, the formula had an adverse reaction on the phenotype of vampires, and it made it so she had seizures anytime that she would ingest blood.
And so it was probably just a
And
logical
that's what
decision
happened.
in her mind of just like, do you choose between having to deal with seizures for all eternity, or do you die, as in
The
die?
last like all public quote unquote public appearances in the last year of her life were a body double.
I mean, I mean, it wouldn't rule it out. I mean, they gave Jeffrey Epstein a body double posthumously.
Just like with Terry A. Davis, I guess. Because yeah, there was that one tweet on. You remember not to derail the topic too much, but yeah, do you remember that one tweet from his account, Terry A. Davis? Like a year after he died, he's like, "Don't believe the CIA. I'm in Lithuania," and then his account got removed
No, I
like
don't.
immediately after that. Yeah. I don't know what the fuck that was about, but probably just somebody hacking into his account. I mean, that's the more plausible explanation, but it's just like why would the CIA do anything to Terry? He's some crazy guy on the internet. Is it because he did something with Temple OS they didn't like?
I mean, I
And
wouldn't rule
it's
it
just
out.
fucking. Honestly, there have been stranger things that have happened, and I can actually I can point you directly to them. There are stranger things that have happened that have receipts proving that definitively they did happen as people think that the series of events played out. It would be stranger than the CIA kidnapping Terry A. Davis. So saying at this point is my suspension of disbelief is limited to just what's conceptually possible because of some of the shit we've come across.
Yeah, there have been numerous points, even in recent history, as in like in the last couple days, where people have told me incredibly unbelievable things and unbelievable claims, and my reaction isn't just disbelief of just sheer unexpectedness of their claims, but it's just like, okay, where is this coming from? And actually trying to examine the actual claims being made. I don't know if that's useful or efficient or intellectual honesty. All I know is that why the hell is this happening?
It's becoming increasingly apparent that people that are selling political ideology when they talk to us are, or at least in my experience, I don't know about you, Heretic, but it's very obvious that they're strategically maneuvering in their conversation with me, and it like in an attempt to try to within like the rhetoric of the conversation make it look like I'm accepting premises which I'm obviously not. And it just it annoys the fuck out of me, and I really would, just prefer people talk to me like I'm not an AI. But on top of that, I know how to read subtext, and I can understand I can understand narratives very well. I'm not fucking retarded. I see what you're doing. So I don't just I don't know. I'm kind of getting sick of that, and it makes me not want to talk with people on Discord because I see it a lot. Just what about you, Heretic? What are
Yeah,
your thoughts?
I have a lot of encounters with that personally. The people who do just try to prescribe subtext in exactly what I'm saying and hoping that I don't pick up on it. The big good examples, like I see this with paleos, who try to say that, well, you see, what you're trying to describe how societies organize is really the same thing as what I'm trying to describe, and I just can't
No,
help
it's
but
not.
think to myself, and I even express this when I'm have the misfortune of being in those conversations, and just point out, hey, you're actively trying to structure and organize societies using political means in such a way as to achieve social norms that you want to inflict on the rest of society. How are we the
Yeah,
same?
and as we've pointed out, that's not something you can treat as though it's like an aesthetic preference, which is almost how paleos treat the distinction between those means, because that entire the entire reasoning around how both of those perspectives frame a society's relationship to a state and how they treat the concept of property norms directly influences how someone, if they take that at face value, will frame a society in their internal narrative of reality, how they think of it, and therefore how they approach problem solving when they consider problems in society that they see, or what even counts as a problem. It's just very, I don't like it. It's just, and more people are catching on to it because of the fact that, one of the things you'll notice, and I don't even really understand why they think that it's effective rhetoric, because it's not even really working. It's just annoying people more than anything. It's making people more annoyed with the ANCAP movement than ever, as far as how I see it perceived from an outside perspective.
I mean, if it's getting more people, it's getting more people annoyed by ANCAPs. Maybe at some point this will actively encourage them to, I don't know, engage in some self-policing, figuring out like who the hell the
And that
actual people who are actually interested in anarchism, and how many people are just conservatards larping as anarchists just to actively be bad actors. I don't really expect much from them, but
uh,
this they can do better.
oh,
Even it might
you
be too
talk
much to
about
ask.
homestead. Oh, you talk about homesteading, so that's exactly like when the state defends a feudal lord's title, right? No, it's more like when the people that are on the land hang the feudal lord, tell the state to F off, and then claim the land as their homestead because they're acting on it, so they can show that it's theirs.
Yeah, so clearly you want an organization that that shoots people whenever they go on the feudal lord's
Necessarily,
land.
I mean, there doesn't, yeah,
I mean, clearly that's the only reason you would have that perspective.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, yep, we clearly have the same perspectives on property here. Oh, and also just to clarify, I'm not necessarily saying, anyone should go out and do anything. Just to clarify, that doesn't count as a violation of TOS, because I'm not saying anyone should do anything. I'm just saying, that in the context of a free society, if someone claims that they're your feudal lord, if you respond that way, that is to be expected within the norms of what would, like, the property norms of what would be available in a free society. You're 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 taking my house. Well, you better have a bigger gun, buddy.
Sorry if I'm being quiet. I'm just I'm trying to do like several things at once. Like you can see my gameplay.
Yep,
Oh, nope,
I
not that.
am watching.
Uh, nope. Oh, this is gonna be bad. Oh, this better work.
Yeah, I mean, Heretic was asking me if I wanted to load this up in, on my end and try to play this, which I didn't want to, because I figured that it would probably, with my current setup, mess with the stream's latency. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't even really be that interesting to watch gameplay on my end anyway, because like Heretic sunk a lot more time into it, and I haven't had the ability to really sit down and play it that much. Hey, what's up? I'm just seeing that more people are starting to show up. Hey, JC.
Hey,
What
you.
we're but you have anything to say to that, Heretic? Just talking for a bit there.
I mean, I don't really.
Wolfo.
Sorry.
Oh, I just said Wolfo because I saw one.
Ah, I was about to give him extra crispy.
ADHD brain. But anyway, you're gonna light the ones that are in the water on fire. Can you do that in this game?
Probably. I mean, I just need a match. You don't
I
know this,
love it
but
when
it's all of those things are probably that's not water, that's gasoline.
it's not water, it's blue clear liquid.
So
That's things that look like they would live in water on vaguely on Earth live in, and has the physics of water, and humans also interact with like water, but it's not water. It's blue clear liquid.
man, I wasn't even
And
sure I even got that one
yeah,
out.
and yes, that's the main difference. Is it's flammable. If you light it on fire, it lights up like an oil field and kills all of the ecosystems inside of it. It's terrible. Don't know why anyone would design a planet like this. It's horrible.
I'm too strong here. I'm not trying to kill these things.
The oceans completely light on fire every like 5 minutes, and then they just go out after a minute.
The worst part is that there's actually not planets but moons like that in our solar system.
The result is that all biology that evolved in the oceans is like something that would come out of the way hell is depicted in Doom.
Everything's just constantly on fire and constantly molten. It's terrible. All right, I don't. I'm not trying to kill you, so I'm just gonna come up to you and chop you with an axe until you have low HP. This is gonna work.
Oh, by the way, Heretic, you never responded to the question that I asked you in in direct messages before this stream started. Have you ever seen that telegram before? And for everybody, just before you respond, so everybody who like obviously doesn't know about this conversation, I'm talking about Idi Amin's telegram to the UN in 1977.
I don't know what you're referring to, actually.
Oh, so Idi Amin, the dictator of Uganda, towards the end of his regime was like starting to go crazy, and one of the things that he did in like 1977 is he sent this telegram to like I think it was an ambassador to the UN, just completely unsolicited for no reason, sends him this message. And he says, yeah, I 100% support the Nazi regime and Hitler specifically, and the Holocaust specifically because they targeted the Jews. Also, here's how the Holocaust really happened. They didn't put people in camps; they sprayed them with gas.
What?
I freaking I've when I first heard that my freaking sides I was laughing like I thought I was gonna die. I was laughing so. Hey yo, I love the Holocaust specifically because they went for the Jews. Also, here's how it happened.
That is a very interesting take, if I may say so.
And then the best part is it came out of nowhere. And there's like there was like some vague tension between the government of Uganda and Israel at the time, but that was like about that was like the closest thing that could like be reasonably explained to motivate that response from the government's perspective.
Yeah. What?
The
What?
funniest thing I've heard in a while.
Yeah. I don't. I don't know. I don't I don't I don't understand. Nothing about that makes sense, even a little bit.
That is just one of the best things that I've heard in a while. Oh, that I didn't know if you had heard of that before, but I figured, you know what, good thing to bring up on stream because it's at the very least entertaining.
It is. It's something. I'll say that. Now there is one other thing I wanted to bring up, which is I only wanted to bring it up because it happened like yesterday, like last night, but I still find it like absolutely hilarious. I shared it in the back alley. I don't know if you saw it, Esso. The results of the Republican primary in Nevada.
Oh yeah, you mentioned that you mentioned wanting to bring this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about it? I didn't get a look yet.
So, what they're going to. So, what people who support Trump are going to say was that even though Donald Trump was not on the ballot, that it was a big refutation to his biggest rival in the primary right now, Nikki Haley. Now you might be asking yourself, who is Nikki Haley? And the answer to that is good. You don't know. You're better off not knowing.
There's people who seriously care about Nikki Haley.
Apparently, yeah.
The prospect of Nikki Haley being president. I can't imagine like caring about that at this point.
Yeah, me neither. But unfortunately, these people they exist, and we have to exist in the same universe as them. Unfortunately, so we have to
Let's go
deal with
back
what we got.
to let's go back to politicians pretending that they like us again. And let's just all pretend that we like them and stop asking questions. Let's go back before the internet existed, where every politician tried to present themselves as like a Mr. Rogers style character, and that actually worked, even though they were that, based on what we have available, they were even worse before the internet. Just look at Bill Clinton.
Yeah, seems about right. Anyways, yeah, I just brought this up because it's like, so I don't have the numbers in front of me, but my recollection from what I saw was around like Nikki Haley got around like 27,000 votes for Republican primary, and none of the above got like 45,000. And to put this in
Yeah,
perspective of
which
how
I'm
significant that is, the number three person, Mike Pence, got 1,700 votes.
yeah, so just nobody cares at this point
Yeah.
about selections. Everybody knows what's up, at least to some extent. They may not understand at the very least mechanically like why governments are acting the way they are, but they understand that elections don't have any meaningful influence over the behavior and decision making governments end up engaging in.
I don't know if
That's
that's.
something that,
Sorry.
what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say that I don't think that's the read I get from it because I know that Nevada did not allow Donald Trump to be eligible for their primary for whatever reason. And so a lot of MAGA people are just going to look into it, just like, see, look how many people prefer Trump, even though he's not even allowed to be on the ballot because our democracy's been compromised. That's what they're going to say.
Yeah, and that's what I mean though. Not that they have become skeptical of the concept of political representation itself. but just that everybody fucking knows that, like, basically the US government is a collapsing regime, and so is pretty much every government in the world right now.
Even if they aren't consciously aware of it, they can at least sense it.
But yeah, you can sense it in how bad inflation is just compared to 2020. Everything, every single thing. I cannot think of a single normal item that I would buy from the store today compared to, before the pandemic, that has not gotten at least twice as expensive. Like where the price of it has not gone up at least 100%
I'm having trouble recalling or
because
coming
of
up with
inflation.
anything either.
And that's the most, and it's not just that, it's how obvious all of the norms that actually make it possible for political organizations and proprietary organization models in general just to be viable internally at this point are held together in large part just because of the government threatening people. Just because whenever someone tries to do something, even that people even vaguely have an interest in, someone threatens a freaking copyright claim.
I mean, a good example is the game I'm playing right now, and we talked about it last stream, Power World.
Yeah.
People actually like it because the developers went out of their way to make a fun game, and people were coming out of the woodworks, particularly the Twitards, talking about like, oh, this is AI, this is taking away from Nintendo's copyright, this is bad, evil, wrong. Insert pejorative here.
Yeah, and Swedish guy, it does apply to Sweden as well. But yeah, everybody is getting increasingly fed up with them because it's just like from a practical perspective, the white market like is intolerable. Everything that gets put out media wise, if it is put out by a licensed production company, it is terrible by default. If it is a food item on the shelves, it's terrible by default compared to anything that anyone actually could make with the resources available to them because of known technique. And when anyone actually tries to do anything that other people would enjoy, I mean, I could think of examples other than this, like that Super Mario Royale game that came out in like 2019, 2020. It was like the original Super Mario Bros, but it was just a race to see how quickly you could speed run the entire game alongside like 70 other people in the browser. Was awesome. Got DMCA'd, but was really popular for like a week or two.
Yeah, I remember that vaguely.
Just,
It's been 5 years,
I mean,
but I
that was
do vaguely
just.
remember it.
I mean, for some reason, that's the example that came to mind, but there's countless others of
Well,
just things people have wanted to do that they either can't touch because the state will threaten them if they do, or because of the state threatening other people, like because of the state defending some property title, it makes it artificially expensive in a way where it otherwise wouldn't be if the state was doing that. And that's the situation. Not just us, not just people who understand what's going on are finding themselves in, but everyone is finding themselves in because simply because of the fact that is just that is just the practical nature of the environment they're operating around, that they're trying to economize with their resources in.
I can think of. I'm pretty sure
It
everyone here
is
can think of
just
other examples. One that sticks out to me is that development of Metroid AM2R stopped because Nintendo gave their cease and desist for that. Pokemon Uranium, of course, fan games, all sorts of like cool stuff, fan made projects that would have otherwise increased the profile and given free advertising to Nintendo, but no, they have to go out of their way to be like the most litigious company on earth.
but yeah, if you notice, this is literally exactly how Heretic and I have been describing since about 2019 or 2020, and have been explaining why since the state was just inevitably going to start collapsing. This exact trend playing out. The fact that it was not going to be profitable for people to associate in the white market anymore, because associating in the white market incurred costs that just made it impossible for people to perceive any sort of gain out of doing so. In a less abstract sense, this right now is that trend playing out.
Well, that's a
You're
good point.
just seeing it, which is why it seems you're just seeing it right now, which is why it seems, more straightforward. But we've been saying this for a while. Just wanted to note that.
I do. I have. Oh man, I'm getting destroyed here. Yeah, we have been saying that for a while, and I remember I've specifically pointed out that as things start to become more tenuous for the state in terms of its ability to maintain its organizational model, it's going to start acting this way. They'll never admit that they're desperate or that their organizational model is on the brink of collapse, and they most certainly will not just raise their hands, pack up, and go home and just say, "Whoop, sorry, state's gone." No, they're just going to become more vicious in their rhetoric. Their actions are going to become a lot more. Oh, what would be the best way to describe this here? Trying to figure out what the best term for this would be. The basic idea is just that they'll start flailing around. They'll start going after people that they perceive as a direct threat and risk to their organizational model. And it'll be increasingly difficult to distinguish what's an actual reasonable course of action to take versus what is just them doing what's in the interests of their organizational model.
Yeah, and that's exactly I've thought of that over the course of the last couple of months, and I've been noticing that increasing, like especially after, well, I shouldn't say the last couple of months. Really, it was ever since I saw that paper from the St. Louis Federal Reserve that I mentioned in the last stream, of them trying to strategize like how to handle the influence of decentralized networks, and realizing that their strategies were stupid. But then I reflected on the line of questioning. Well, let's say they did understand the nature of their predicament. What would they be able to do about it? It would look a lot like this, where all they're doing is just trying to sustain what they have as long as they can, while they loot the coffers of the empire.
I mean, it's basically all they can do. Just try to keep things going for as long as possible and try to stop the spread by setting up a whole bunch of shell companies as exchanges for cryptocurrency. I mean, I think I mentioned last stream, but it's like I had never heard of FTX, the firm, and the crypto exchange prior to these allegations of fraud on the part of what's his face? Sam Bankman Fried, I think his name was, which is a stupid name, by the way. To, like that he was defrauding people somehow. I don't really know the details, and quite frankly, I don't really care that much. But I mean, it is just worth bringing up because that's the trick I think that they're using to try to sucker people in. That oh, cryptocurrency. You mean the stuff that Sam Bankman-Fried was using to scam people with? Trying to insinuate that anyone who talks about crypto is actively trying to set up some kind of Ponzi scheme or pyramid scheme.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that sort of propaganda by association technique, and anybody who hasn't noticed it, it's glaringly obvious anytime that it's talked about in the white market. But yeah, it's really dumb if you understand because if you understand the first thing about any proof of work blockchain currency, the very first thing that you understand about it is that the proof of work mechanism literally necessitates it not having anything functionally like an administrator, anything functionally like some sort of person regulating how much currency can or can't be in existence, which is what describing it as a quote unquote Ponzi scheme would imply. What they're describing are a lot of organizations that started sprouting up around like 2017 or 2018 that actually did try to run Ponzi schemes around trading crypto around trading cryptocurrency and crypto mining or various other business models that just really amounted to sticking the word crypto in the name of their corporation while people were buying stocks, which yeah, if you bought stocks that had anything to do with cryptocurrency, you don't know what are you doing? Stop. You don't know what it is that you're buying. Don't, dude.
I've actually seen the
But
same exact thing in the precious metals market, where there's a whole lot of firms that you can buy stock in, and people foolishly equivocate the purchasing of those stocks as the same thing as purchasing precious metals. As you said, what are
also
you
I
doing?
see.
Stop. Go to the pawn shop.
Yes, so if you're unfamiliar with the take of someone that would actually, that wouldn't tell you that would give you an opinion about cryptocurrency that is something other than it's a scam. Well, which what it actually is a commodity that is useful after fiat currencies are no longer viable. The reason no one is thinking that it is going to compete with the dollar. Its purpose is to become money in an environment where fiat currencies have been invalidated because of economic pressures. So, but digressing, yeah, if you want the opinion of someone who's going to tell you something other than cryptocurrency is a scam, then yes, our actual perspective is that things like Bitcoin Island or whatever the hell that really sketchy. Yeah, we hate that stuff too. For exactly the same reason that all of you do. It's just that that's not, that there are things that this narrative of this being these business models being the only things that economically could possibly be associated with cryptocurrency. Well, that's very much relative only to the context of modern political economies.
And they need the modern political economies absolutely need them in order to continue to function. In a way, it's kind of symbiotic. They create the problem that they claim to exist to solve. Which I mean, like, is that really unusual? How many times have we seen just example after example of the state creating a problem that they claim to try to solve? It just, to me, it's just constant. You know, I actually have a hard time remembering the last time that wasn't the case. I mean, it's actually a pretty good segue into the main topic, which we titled this stream after to begin with, which is that well, homelessness.
Yeah, but by the way, just looking at the comments, hey Geo Global, didn't miss you. Really appreciate that. It's nice seeing comments like that. Wouldn't exactly frame the content that we're going to be making going forward as exactly furthering the ANCAP movement, but anybody who does consider themselves an ANCAP isn't going to object to anything that we would be saying. So
I mean,
stick
anyone
around.
who seriously considers himself an anarchist shouldn't really, or really, I don't think I should say shouldn't, but I genuinely can't conceive of a reason they would have to object to anything that we're going to say.
Are you serious about a conception of freedom where property is based on freedom, i.e., everyone owns things because they actually are acting on them and therefore are demonstrating that, it's theirs? Uh, and there aren't proprietors that by default are determining the terms that people can act through in order to obtain resources and therefore effectively stratifying an oppressive class system into existence. If you're for a conception of freedom that undermines the organization that maintains that class structure, and establishes norms around property where this is how property in societies emerge in a way where it's considered free, then we have a common conception of freedom. Basically, just we can describe what a free society would actually look like is the difference.
They kind of just have their own, for the most part. This is not, of course, describing all ANCAPs, or even most of them, but just like the ones that we typically encounter have this preconceived idea of social norms they want to see emerge in society and actively work backwards to try to engage in social engineering to bring this about.
Yeah, don't worry, Geo Global. You'll like the stuff that we're gonna be making going forward. But yeah, the stuff that we're going to be making going forward is obviously going to be consider it an expansion upon what we've made before. But we are gonna probably end up revisiting a lot of those topics for sure.
I mean, at this point, I mean, I've already like planned on revisiting a good chunk of it. I mean, I actually have already in a few earlier videos. Like, I think I remember before the hiatus making a video revising my reply to several points or put forward on one of the alt right websites. I don't remember which one.
Yeah, I saw that. That was a good video.
Yeah, some of my takes back then are pretty cursed, so it is worth looking back on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been years since I've watched videos that I made since around 2017, but I just know that when I act like that's got to be something that we do on stream one time. So I got to just sit here and listen to something that I made from around 2017 and talk about it
Oh,
because I would
that I can't tell if that's going
would
to
be
be
fun.
cursed or blessed.
I can't either. It'll be content that's worth watching either way. But yeah, seems like a good idea for something maybe we can do in the next stream or two.
Yeah, we can take a look at it.
Look into it. Anyway, onto the topic of this stream though that we've named it after, but we're literally just getting into now how Donald Duck says that he's gonna go after all the cringe libtards that have been priced out of being able to live anywhere. Because obviously the only reason they're living that way is just because they're a bunch of lazy Zoomers who don't have a work ethic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was just thinking about this. I was talking about this on a stream I was doing, not here, but no, actually, it wasn't a stream. It was just me talking in voice chat, and I just pointed out that it's a very interesting situation that people in or people who are homeless have to regard their situation of homelessness, because the common refrain, particularly from conservatards, goes that, oh, you're homeless just because you're lazy and you're not willing to work. But then you point out, hey, wait a minute, I actually am willing to work. I'm just not able to work because anytime I apply for a job, they require me to put down a fixed address. But because I'm homeless, I literally do not have a fixed address. Now,
Which, yeah,
I was actually looking into that a little
sorry.
bit more deeply, and particularly a situation about a fixed address. Strictly speaking, it's firms are not required to only hire people who have fixed addresses. I just want to make that 100% crystal clear. You don't you're not required to be or to live in a house or an apartment to get a job. But what you are legally required to have or do or something is to return the property and personal items of employees who have been fired, quit, or no longer work for you for one reason or another. So, if you have a bag of half eaten potato chips and you get fired that day and you go home, they are legally required to mail that to you. But if you don't have a fixed address, it means that they're liable. So, just as a means of risk mitigation, employers directly have an incentive to make sure that the people that they hire have a fixed address, and if they don't have a fixed address, they're just going to get rid of them. They're just not going to have them. Now, the only way around this that I can conceive of, it by no means is the only way to solve this problem, but it is the most expedient that I'm aware of, is to, what's the term here? Why are you, come here. The only way to really get around this that I can think of is to have a P.O. box rented from the post office, which, even if you want to ignore the problems entailed by just renting in general, you can point out that, rent on a P.O. box is actually dirt cheap. I haven't looked into how cheap it is, but I have heard that it's like maybe a couple dollars a month, something around there. And I imagine it varies from place to place, but it's really not that bad. So in theory, one could move it there. But the simple fact that one is in a soft sense required to have these associations to begin with, just to be able to get into that position where they can associate in the white market, basically guarantees that people aren't going to associate in the white market if they can help it. So they kind of just created their own problem there.
Yeah, well, it makes it so if you are going to get your income, like if you are going to base that on the white market, then it guarantees that you have this socially engineered cost associated with that. So there is no way to there is legally after that point, if this is what the state goes, if this is the program that the state enacts following 2024, if that's what they're gonna go ahead and do, then yeah, that's only gonna make the current antagonism that we're seeing worse. But on top of that, it's not gonna make people capitulate and get white market jobs all of a sudden. It's just going to make it like you said, it's gonna make it so more people start investing in making income outside of the white market
Hmm. And just so
because
that people
they
know what
don't.
we're referring to, there was an article from actually April of last year. So this isn't a new thing, although the way that we're describing it, it kind of does give the insinuation that we are talking about a new thing. That
Well,
the
there's actually other stories that I could point to from mostly major cities all around the US and parts of Canada that suggest that there's an ongoing strategy to carry out like an anti sorry, you go ahead, but an anti-homeless campaign.
yeah. So uh, what I'm referring to is an article from April of 2023 last year, where Donald Trump is apparently attempting to campaign about how he's going to solve the homelessness problem. And his method of doing so is going to be enacting some kind of federal. Oh, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I mean, I read a couple days ago, but some of the details are escaping me right now. Where he wants the state, the federal government, to make it illegal for urban encampments to exist. So these are the things like the tent cities you're seeing in major metropolitan areas all around the country. But it is a bit more than that. I'm trying to recall some of the details directly, and honestly, I'm having a bit of a difficult time here, so pardon me. But it does just, all it's going to do is kind of affirm exactly what we've been describing before, where it just highlights the antagonism the state holds against people outside of their very narrow scope of acceptable behavior, and it's just going to drive homeless people away from politics in general, as their relationship with the state is just going to become so undeniable that even they won't be able to do anything other than acknowledge it. I mean, it's already bad enough. I
And
mean, I think everybody here has at least some conception of the, oh, what's it called? I'm trying to remember the term, but I'm blanking on it. Hostile architecture. That's it.
yeah,
And so that gives a pretty good example of what I'm attempting to describe, where the state just like actively tries to screw over homeless people for no other reason than, oh, we need to increase our property values. Oh, hey, I wonder why the homeless are homeless. Maybe it's because maybe it's because a one half bedroom shanty costs $500,000 to purchase, and if you don't have five hundred thousand
yeah.
dollars, you can get a mortgage, which basically forces you to associate with the white market for like 40 years, as the bank gets to arbitrarily determine for itself what it counts as viable income or not. Basically, creating another
Well, the
layer of incentive and leverage, or an artificial leverage over your life.
Well, and the way that it would conventionally be framed within the state's propaganda model is exactly how I was, describing the way boomer mentality and just in general. the way that the state tries to propagandize and associate moral attitudes with economic attitudes, turning every moral consideration into a binary yes or no option, which, the standards, if you disagree with the standards that the state considers to be valid for a standard of proof or validity. Your standards are negotiable, but theirs never are. Of course, it's when it comes to their standards, it's always a yes or no option. But anyway, uh, kind of lost my train of thought with that. But anyway, Clown Zone. I see that you're in the chat, and sorry, I've been trying to get around to your question. And you're not even the first one to ask about that. But Heretic, your thoughts on apparent because people are wanting to know our thoughts on Tucker Carlson interviewing Putin. Because honestly, I haven't watched the interview and I only heard about it like yesterday. That's not even really the media sphere that I pay attention to at this point, if I even do watch media.
I just don't watch much media at all, and the only time I do is ancillary, largely just because it's on, and I have like a slight curiosity towards what the what's being said in the mainstream. But my thoughts on Bucker Barlson talking to Vladimir Putin is I know exactly what Bucker Barlson is going to say. I haven't watched the interview. I don't even know if he's done the interview already or not, but I already know exactly what he's going to say, so it's kind of pointless for me to pretend that he is going to be doing anything other than what I'm going to describe. And what I'm going to describe is just that, hey, uh, Vladimir Putin, and this is me paraphrasing my expectation for what Tucker Carlson is going to say, Vladimir Putin genuinely cares about his people and the Russian people, and the United States and politicians in the United States ought to care more about the American people. His whole point is just like he's going to be using uh, Vladimir Putin as a sounding board for his own preconceived beliefs about nationalism, and basically just the ways to say that American politicians should be more nationalistic.
Yeah, I've noticed, and it's starting to become increasingly apparent that this sort of framing is deliberate as well because of how many examples I've seen across like the reactionary movements, how consistently I've seen this subtext. But there's like there's an association I've seen increasingly with like the wokeness that's destroying the West and the influences that the BRIC states are acting as an influence in the world fighting against. Like I've noticed that sort of framing in at least the propaganda put out by the Russian government. And yeah, the Tucker Carlson, I interviewing Vladimir Putin, I guess is like it's like a implicit signal that he is allying himself with the BRICS media sphere. So that's the reason I suppose that people could be talking about it, having not even seen the interview myself. But I will, if that is the case, I will say this. Interesting how that doesn't need to be said, yet you can tell based on the Russian government's organizational interests that there's significance to that interview. Funny how that works, isn't it?
Seems about right.
Yeah, it's almost like you can use the organization model that governments are operating around to see what they're actually motivated to do because of the behaviors that are required to continue running that organization. There's definitive things required to maintain it. So it's almost like you can see if you start holistically looking at all of the state's behavior and framing it from that perspective, their behavior starts looking like a strategy to reinforce that organization.
Weird.
It's just interesting how that works.
And it just keeps happening. I swear,
Yeah,
I've
it's
actually had people
strange
compare me.
how
People have actually said that I'm an oracle because of my ability to just like understand what the state is and what it's going to do.
and I've gotten yeah, people have responded to me talking about the state the same way when I'm just describing it in the context of like history or I'm talking about philosophical movements in the abstract. Then exactly like you describe your boomers reacting to you, anybody that I have this sort of interaction with, most of the time it's the exact same way. Wow, how that's it's strange. How do you know all of that? How are you able to plot all of that out just with those bits of context? Explains my methodology. It undermines political ideology and therefore they get emotionally compromised and argue with me even though they were literally just acknowledging a second ago that the method is clearly scientific.
Mm-hmm. The fact that that's the I think that's the part that upsets them the most. That it undermines their ability to conceptualize their environment ideologically, and to them, conceptualizing it ideologically is the same as conceptualizing it at all. So it kind of undermines their ability to just. They might as well be blind, if I want to put that in a very simple and understand way. I am intellectually ripping out their eyes.
It's that exact interaction playing out, dozens of times that made me start questioning, you know, maybe we're referring to the same words to name these concepts, but the same words, it doesn't seem like everybody is naming the same concept. I should start looking at the rules people are using to describe concepts instead of just looking at the word they're using and then referring to the way it's colloquially described in the dictionary to base my understanding of the nature of that concept on.
Well, that's evil. How dare you do
It
that?
was following that line of it was following that line of reasoning that led us here, basically.
Pretty much. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's particularly boomers in the boomer sphere. That's just a step too far. At that point, you're a dangerous radical, and people wonder why.
That's literally it.
And people wonder why we seem to have the ability to see the future.
It's not. It's just stop fucking creating fantasies in your head based on ideology because that's all ideology does. It causes you to create a simulation of the world that you want in your head and then project actual like your perceived investment in actual environmental factors you have to economize around. You start associating that model in your head that's idyllic and doesn't actually represent nature with something you have an investment in, and then the moment that what's actually being expressed in the environment defies that expectation, people get emotionally compromised. So if someone has an ideological perspective that's political, they get invested in something that requires existing norms around property to be maintained, even if they're not looking at it from the perspective of, well, property titles need to exist in order for me to have my interests met. That's effectively the way they're economizing. And that's the main point that we've discovered and what we've been trying to talk about with the phenomenon of politicization. It's like a form of brainwashing that is created through weaponizing environmental costs against people that are created by the state, simply limiting everyone's access to what's available.
I am reminded of, and I know that people are going to bring this up, so I think it's worth addressing, particularly on the homeless topic. Uh, there are several incentives that the state has just straight up created in order to get as many people to seemingly stay out of the white market. Like there are interviews of people who describe like all of the benefits that they receive from the state. Free, they get food, they get computers, they get all sorts of other cool stuff, and they even get health care in some places, Medicare and Medicaid. And a lot of the people who are interviewed just like, yeah, they even give us clean needles in some cities. Why would I ever want to get a job?
Well, in those cases, it's familiar, of course, with the original welfare state, the original welfare program, and its inception, right?
Yeah, gotta get those darn Nigerians voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
Well, actually, it emerged out of the Prussian Empire in the mid 19th century, and its explicit purpose was to make it so people who weren't able to be wages in the white market were still financially dependent on the government because they were getting their source of that they were getting their income through basically a stream that was directly controlled by the government. And in also in controlling the amount of income they get, it effectively controls the possible range of behaviors that people who are limited to welfare schemes. It limits what possible economic models they can engage in, so they can't do anything subversive. And yeah, the government originally at the time wrote a lot about the original purpose of welfare models. It's really insightful. Just look up any literature around it in around the political science scene, Prussia, mid 1800s.
Yep, sounds about right. I
That
reminded of the
that's it, very explicitly that is very explicitly how it was framed.
I distinctly recall the literature around the Prussian model of education, why it existed, and why they chose to do the things that they did, and they were also seemingly explicit. I swear, like I don't know why, but seemingly all of the terrible ideas that come around in the West all seem to always emerge from Prussia or Germany. And for the life of me, I
Yeah,
don't know
a
why.
disproportionate a disproportionate number of just the philosophical movements that have caused the most problems as far as trying to actually pursue knowledge in academia or philosophical movements do seem to originate out of Germany for sure, or just that region like Austria or Germany. But then also the best simultaneously, the few saving graces of the last like 100 years of metaphysical study or philosophical movements. Those thinkers also came out of the Prussia area, like Gottlob Frege, Ludwig Wittgenstein, Mises, obviously, just naming a couple examples.
It seems to be like a Austrian thing, though. It's like the best part about Prussian and Russian thinking, and not Russian, Prussian and German thinking doesn't even come from Germany.
Yeah, that's why I say Prussia and not Germany, because I'm being charitable.
That's fair. It's just like it's just a pattern I can't help but notice and be bothered by. And I know I'm not the only one that's noticed this.
But yeah, just anyway, I guess back to briefly because more comments were left about the Putin Tucker Carlson topic. I guess the last thing I have to say about that is I do kind of find the BRICS propaganda model funny, at least. Dropping scatter bombs to own the libs is literally it.
I
It's
don't
like
know what you're referring to, actually.
the way that they're framing they're framing like the Russian government and a lot of the BRIC states that are allying with the Russian government ever since the Russia-Ukraine war. There's been this sort of subtext in how they frame uh the war from their perspective, and they frame it as like a pushback against SJWs. So it literally is we're fighting this war to own the libs, and it's like it. I'm surprised you haven't seen any of that. The Russian government put out an ad in like 2023 where it was somebody like trying to get on an airport in the US, and somebody next to him in the plane said, "No, you gotta give black people first class because that's reparations."
Worst part is that I can actually
They're
see that happening.
people. No, that was in an actual commercial. You could look it up after the stream. Anybody in the chat, if you remember seeing that, mention it because you could. I mean, look it up right now. Like Russian airport commercial. And there were I saw quite a few of these like culture war channels talking about it. Russian government owns woke U.S. It's so it's funny in like in an absurdist sort of way. It's like Fox News if it was depicted in a Philip K. Dick novel at this point. Yeah, we're dropping scatter bombs to own the libs. The orphan children that survived, well, they're just gonna learn some American values.
Should have been
Pull
salt
yourselves
in the
up by the
flag more. Maybe then
bootstraps.
your dad'd still be alive.
Yeah, it's fucking. I can't wait until this ends. I hate it. I hate it so much. Laughing to cope.
You can't wait until what's gone.
Governments just in general.
Well, good news is that they're going to stick around for a little bit. And I think we talked before about the what's it called? Why am I blanking on the term right now? The hollow state, and what that necessarily entails for the future of political planning. They're not gonna, as I said earlier in the stream, they're not just gonna pack up their bags and just be like, "Whoop, sorry, government's gone. Guess we're just gonna go home now." No, they're just gonna be like, they're just gonna continue to pretend everything's hunky dory. Presidents will continue to be elected. The Senate will continue to convene and pass legislation. and they'll do everything they can to continue to spread the message of, oh, we're strong, we're mighty, we have such a great effect in your life. Meanwhile, it has been 12 years and no one has seen a cop. I don't mean I don't mean like
Yeah.
actually, but I'm just giving like I'm just giving like a rather hyperbolic example of a what I consider to be a fairly realistic situation of people and how they interact with their environment in the absence of political rule.
I mean, that's more or less the dynamic the state is already trying to project right now. They've created this giant surveillance apparatus, but if you actually think about how it would work from the state's perspective, they can only use any of the information that's actually collected if basically every single agency is coordinating internally on a single project. And the only way that can happen is if basically somebody really fucked up and got everyone's attention. So just don't be an idiot at this point and understand what you're doing, and you can stay out of the state's way. It's just them trying to scare you. Because think of how often you actually see police unless you basically get their attention. They just because of the tools they use at this point to like profile and strategize around trying to arrest people and meet quotas. Just that dynamic in and of itself is something to really sit there and think about if you're not already convinced that the government hates you. But yeah, just the fact that there's arrest quotas, or functionally there are because of how they government sustain themselves internally. But digressing, yeah, I actually, you know what? I think I kind of, I kind of made the point I was going to with
There's,
there with that,
Here's something
and
that I
and
would
no,
recommend people
we do not.
consider. When was the last time you personally saw an FBI agent?
I've literally never seen an FBI agent.
Now, I mean, one could point out that hey, you probably did see an FBI agent at some point in your life, but
Yeah,
they probably were just wearing a suit and tie, and they weren't doing anything to advertise that they were FBI. Which I mean, fair enough, but it still makes you wonder how common the uh, actual activity of the FBI actually is, or if they're just trying to create the CSI effect. You know, part of me, this is actually a conversation that people were having. I can't remember where, just a couple days ago, about the CSI effect and whether or not that was actually intentional to give people an
it is
illusion about how
100%
these
intentional.
agencies actually operated.
Yeah, it's 100% intentional. There are so many programs within the umbrella of like the umbrella project. There are so many projects, I mean, within the umbrella program of MK Ultra that specifically dedicate are specifically dedicated to studying the way that the brain reacts to the perception of archetypes. You cannot convince me that the way that examples of the CSI effect all strategically, when you consider them holistically, they all together seem to create the impression that police departments and government agencies are more sophisticated than they actually are, and are more competent than they're functionally capable of being in practice. Yeah, that's you can't convince me that isn't intentional. Sorry. Governments know about it. We know that they know about it, and it emerged in media around, like, just conveniently after MK Ultra, when we know that they would have like intimately been familiar with it. That's when we start seeing the CSI effect being used specifically on a mass scale to create cultural myths like this.
And I don't know where it started. I mean, well, point is, like, it's happened, and people figure it out eventually. What are you doing?
I mean, you know that this is something that very few people actually know. It is actually not legal in the US to make and release a movie in the legal economy that depicts a branch of the US military or quote unquote law enforcement if the script has not been reviewed by either the Department of Defense or the CIA. Every single piece of media that has been released through white market production companies that depicts a branch of the military or depicts police in any way, the script has been revised by either the CIA or the Department of Defense. You can look this up. I'm not I that is uncontroversial. Look up fuck I can't remember the name of the article. You would find this openly on like you can openly find this on Wikipedia. It's not even like it's not even that deep of a rabbit hole. I think it's like Defense Department to Hollywood pipeline or something. That's the title of it.
I'm
But yeah,
sorry,
do you know about that, Heretic?
I wouldn't remember the name.
Well, anyway, that's true, which just the fact that that's true alone suggests a use of the CSI effect for the purpose of reinforcing propaganda models. If it's true for the design and story and narrative of games like Call of Duty, why can't it be true for shows like Law and Order? That's all I'm saying.
Which let's be honest, it most likely is. That's probably why they even are there to begin with.
Yeah, we by the way, I brought up Call of Duty as an example because you can find many articles about how the scripts of every single Call of Duty game are written by the CIA. Or at the very least, the final draft before the final draft is the one that is worked with in the development of the game. Before they even start, it is the version that is approved by the CIA. It's JC in chat, hence why Call of Duty often gets called U.S. military propaganda. That it just uncontroversially is. Like that's not even a hot take. It's something that if someone were to challenge you on, you could literally just cite receipts. It's something that is technically true. You can't even argue with it.
At the bare minimum, you can. There's no way of being able to refute the claim that you're actively attempting, or that it's actively written, or at the very least revised by the U.S. military and U.S. military personnel for the purposes of pushing forth a narrative.
Unless you're going to seriously sit there and try to make the argument that, oh, the US government doesn't specifically go after the scripts that depict themselves in order to make themselves look better. That's not the reason they're editing the scripts. Unless you're going to make that argument, then, okay.
I don't know who is dishonest enough to try to make that claim.
The government has incentives that motivate its behavior that defy basically the incentive structure of anything that could exist right now. Because it's just common sense. Don't question it. It's human nature. That's why they're put there. This
Well, let me
isn't
just
just the
cite to
secular
you.
recreation. It's not just the secular recreation of the divine right of kings. I'm referring to a transcendental axiom that's human nature. Come on, heretic.
Well, of course. I mean, all you have to do is just say, "This is trend." All you have to do is just say that, "Oh, it's this." All you have to do is just make a reference to some undefinable piece of information that requires no elaboration whatsoever and is never going to be elaborated upon, and you can avoid any kind of questioning whatsoever because
Yeah,
it
it's
is just.
convenient. It furthers whatever narrative that you're trying to use it to further, and simultaneously, regardless of the argument that you're making, it doesn't prove anything and it prevents anybody from being able to question you. So within the context of conversations, it appears to further whatever narrative you're arguing, even though logically it's nonsense. Funny how that works.
But it's not nonsense because I use big boy words like self evident. Because nobody ever
Yes,
lied and
people just
nobody ever used vague, undefinable language to say anything misleading.
Yes, and if we were to take the neo-reactionary narrative of society at face value, or really just any political narrative of society at face value, we're expected to believe that governments still exist because people want them to be there. So, about as seriously as I take that from a metaphysical perspective at this point, all I really need to say is just that. I think.
I still have trouble getting around the idea that there are people who unironically believe that you can just defeat the state by clapping your hands and disbelieving that and then it goes away, and that states will somehow
We have to
emerge
make
again because people want them to. First off, I've never met a
we have
single person in my life who was in a big fat hurry to be oppressed.
Yeah, you can make states go away by convincing governments to just not oppress people anymore, not follow the literally all of the incentive structures that are set up for them to follow. To because that's how that works. When, when you're offered $1 million, you can and your frame of reference for what to do with $1 million is, well, what I don't know. Any person in the context of modern societies would think if $1 million suddenly fell in their lap. If that happens, that's how that works. You can just choose to suddenly think that's equivalent to $0.
Well, of course. I mean, what else are you supposed to do? It's just reasonable and logical after all. And I know this because I called it reasonable and logical without having to define my terms or demonstrate any steps in my reasoning whatsoever. I am so smart.
So because psychic profit, though, that means that value is arbitrary because that's how that works. Which that seems to be the way that paleos treat the concept of psychic profit in the Austrian method. It's like they treat it as like an excuse to get out of people refuting their claims, and that's not at all. It's supposed to be a description of a sense of profit that one receives from an action that is disconnected from economic incentives that the norms of their behavior would indicate they have when reflecting on the environment they're operating around. It doesn't mean the logic to it can be whatever the fuck the person making the argument needs it to be so that their argument works logically. It means that it's a phenomenon that doesn't really have any practical association to the environment. It's just purely mental.
I have not actually encountered paleo citing psychic profit as a means of trying to avoid uh, any kind of discussions regarding value.
Many times I have seen psychic profit cited as a way of trying to explain how the pressure exists that drives people to create hierarchies supposedly next to time preference, which not to get too into that, but because of their assumptions about the nature of about the methodology they use to even understand how behavior works, they are inaccurately characterizing time preference, or at the very least, they're not characterizing time preference in the way that it would be implied by the epistemological foundation of the Austrian method. In other words, it's equivocation. They're using the word time preference to refer to a concept that is not what was demonstrated by the Austrian method, and they're doing so disingenuously to further false premises. And I'm not just saying that out of speculation. Papa has explicitly said that he has an express interest in trying to further deterministic takes about human action under the guise of the Austrian method. And that is exactly how he frames it. It's not compatible with the Austrian method, but through subtext, we can make the Austrian method say this. I know that that's probably going to trigger a lot of people, so a lot of people are going to ask me about it. I can give you exactly, I can't remember the exact book right now and the exact page number. It was one of his more recent works. But verbatim, he says this, and if anybody wants me after the stream to send him a screenshot to confirm it. Like if you're hopping and you think I'm full of shit, I can show you. And I'm. It's not a misrepresentation. It is absolutely the full context of the quote. It is acknowledging that is not what the Austrian method, as it's currently conceived of, implies, but we can turn it into a political ideology by reframing this as something that furthers determinism instead, or furthers race realism. Specifically, he has like a weird obsession with race realism in any of his actual works. If you actually read any of his other essays or listen to his other material, other than the essays that were in Democracy, the God That Failed, because anyway, heretic. It's been a bit since you've said something. What you want to say anything?
I mean, you're on a roll. I didn't really feel the need to add anything. Though I know that even in democracy, there is a little bit of racialist subtext. Enough that one could have plausible deniability in how one interprets it and not at all be intellectually dishonest. And I'm not saying that sarcastically either, I promise. It's just like you kind of have to really go between the lines to get that interpretation. And even then, it's subtle enough that one could easily just come up with another reinterpretation and have it actually not come off as a dishonest attempt to reframe something. But it is very clear
Well,
that even within democracy, like I cite easily my favorite page just because of how effective it is at demonstrating my point in refuting Hop as a quote unquote philosopher is page 173. And you know what I'm talking about, right, So?
Yeah.
Yep.
And the attempts at refuting that are you're taking it out of context. Then if you cite pages 172 and 174, it shows that actually if you have the whole context, it's worse.
I swear, like
Because
when we originally found like page 173, I think I read through like page 170 to page 176 more critically than I ever did anything else in my entire life, just to make sure I was not taking this out of context, because I was afraid of being in a situation where I would be taking this page and then someone would point out, hey, you're wrong because of this that explains what he actually means, and and then said passage would say hypothetically, I'm not saying this actually happens, but just say hypothetically, it says it would be anti-libertarian to claim that people only have humanity on the basis of their understanding of, well, what's that called? Division of labor. That if that context actually did exist in Democracy, the God That Failed, it would actually be helpful. It would contextualize things in such a way that makes sense. It's not great,
but
but
it's
it
not.
makes sense. But that's not what happens. He just explicitly says that the Austrian methodology necessarily entails, in his own mind, that people who do not understand division of labor are not people, and therefore it is justified to hunt and kill them.
Yeah, and that's what it says explicitly on page 173. So on page 172, so basically just the part of the essay leading up to that, Hoppe makes it explicitly clear that our framing of it is in fact accurate. Yes, it is because of these factors that determine agency outside of their control that this is true about the division of labor. So okay, yes, Papa's just saying explicitly on the page before that the Backalley's take is correct. But yeah, and then on the page after that, the pages after that, it's just him starting to name specific groups. So yeah, it's this is true about the division of labor. That implies that certain people aren't actually people, and then the next pages are just and that those people are the blacks and the gays and the and the femoids and so yeah, I mean people who are making that argument to us. Have you read Democracy, the God That Failed?
I think the closest that they got to actually reading it was listening to some 20-minute video made by Springtime of Nations attempting to summarize. And I want to put this in air quotes, by the way, summarize Democracy, the God That Failed, and the way Springtime of Nations puts forth. They're like, this is brave. I actually don't know his take on Democracy, the God That Failed, so I'm just guessing here. But I imagine it's along the lines of, it's this brave, bold take on human liberty and expression in such a way that demonstrates how libertarianism is not only not incompatible with political rule being used as a tool by which we can impose our social norms onto people, but the only way to be a libertarian is to impose your preferred social norms onto people using political means.
Yeah, it's just a brainwashing tactic that makes you think that imposing a certain morality on other people is something that's necessary for you to do in order for you to meet whatever ends you've abstracted in your head as something that you want to see achieved.
It's also
So
part of
this
the
thing
reason
that
why
other people, this thing other people describe, it is like this thing. It is therefore this thing. Therefore, they are saying that they're describing this thing.
hooray! I love defining my entire personality and beliefs on the basis of what is expected of me by associating with a label. And this is like one of the
Yeah,
reasons that, like, particularly in the back alley, I've been like very critical of associating with labels at all. Just because I've seen the way that it subverts people's thinking, getting them to associate their own beliefs, personalities, and identities on the basis of what is expected of them because of this label that they assign to themselves. You're a libertarian, therefore you have to
behold,
think this. Well, I guess I think this then.
behold, the demonic summoning table of the idolaters. Convert your ideas and values and belief systems into a point that is projected onto a chart and associate it with an economic model. Wow, these values represent lib right, therefore I think I'm lib right. But people who are lib right also hate poor people. Now you have to hate poor people.
But wait, I grew up poor. You hate poor people now. You're not
That's
poor anymore because you pulled yourself up by your bootstraps. No, my dad got a promotion at work because he helped his boss fix his car. Well, he pulled himself up by his bootstraps, not because he was at the right place at the right time. And you just hate poor people because you know they're fat and they're lazy and they don't know how to do stuff.
You just hate poor people because they hide inside of your walls and they look at you through them and they scurry around at night and they wait till I go to sleep and steal all the fucking pork rinds. God, I hate poor people.
Ugh, disgusting. I mean, just hearing you describe that just makes my blood boil. You know.
I hate poor people. Those fish in the river in Southeast Asia that swim up your urethra. God, they all should just be exterminated. Those stupid lib cucks. Yeah, I agree with Trump. That they're basically the same thing. Therefore, they are the same thing. Lib cucks are a parasitic species of fish.
just do what Rothbard suggested in his 91 essay. You know the one, the program for right wing populism.
Yeah.
Unleash the cops. Clear the bums off the street. Where they go, nobody care or who cares. Just as long as they're not lowering our property values. And we gotta keep those property values up as high as possible. Not because we view real estate as an investment and not as a productive asset, and we want to see our investment assets increase, but because we gotta price out the poors out of our neighborhoods. Because they are an inferior class of people that are identified by the law as humans. And that's why we gotta get rid of the state so that we can hunt them down like the vermin they are. Because the state's protecting poor people by preventing us from being able to hunt them down and round them up like cattle.
Rothbard just starts describing Disney starting a military division that behaves like the Derlevanger Brigade.
I mean, if you were to ask Rothbard, he'd probably think that it's really good. And I'm pretty sure he's also supportive of the Florida Disney Covenant community.
Division's code name Mickler.
I'm sorry, what?
That's what they would be referred to internally by the Disney Corporation, the Disney Death Squad. It's Mickler
I don't get it, but it's funny.
because it's Disney Death Squad and Nazi Germany. Come on, gotta
As you were describing it, I finally got it.
gotta get it for the funniness to work sometimes. Just come on.
Oh, hey, you know what? Probably someone found that my inability to get it is funny. If you're in chat, you can totally confirm or deny this, because I actually don't know.
I don't care either way, but
What's
I
the
guess
Disney Death?
just
What's
going.
the
I
Disney
guess
Death
just
Squad in a chat saying?
um. I guess we'll see, but yeah, the reason why we bring up these anti-homeless this anti-homeless agenda is, well, first of all, you can't deny that there is clearly a coordinated agenda, specifically at least in the US and Canada, um, to try to not specifically like not aimed at junkies. That's part of the propaganda model. Is whenever they say homeless, they make you think of someone who is basically who is homeless because they're a fentanyl addict. But really, what they're referring to is anybody that doesn't have a fixed address, and any actual laws that have been acted that states have started acting on and how they've been treating them have explicitly characterized homelessness in this way, which is what I base this on. But if you consider that coupled with trends that are going on in political economies right now, that is very clearly a coordinated effort to try to entrap people into situations where they have less mobility, so they have fewer options, and therefore the white market vendors that they obtain their income through have more financial leverage over them.
Well,
That's very blatantly what that is.
why do you think getting people into the white market is so important for for the political class? Getting people financially bound to a single location.
Yeah, so they have fewer resources to work with and they're stuck in a single location. Oh man, why would especially right now, what possible reasons would the state have for trying to make that a norm and socially engineer those conditions into being?
I can't think of any whatsoever. Especially nowadays, where
Can't
being
be
able to be
the
mobile, having as little leverage as possible placed over you, is
can't
worth its weight
be
in gold. In many cases, literally.
can't be literally the exact same fucking incentives that the state acts on when it is enforcing property titles for the purpose of creating artificial costs to begin with. It's just an extension of that exact same mechanism for social engineering. So obviously, that's how the state sees it.
Right
They
now, I'm just
fired they fired 50 bullets at the exact same target, but the 51st bullet, you don't know if the intention was the same as all 50 of the other bullets. Come on, heretic. Something different might have happened
clearly.
had it hit.
Right now, I'm just trying to think. We're in election. We're in an election year. And I might be reading too much
Indeed.
into this, but I feel like there's something missing going on with the homeless situation. I feel like I keep getting this
Probably.
feeling I'm overlooking something, but I can't figure out what.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's definitely we don't exactly know how like what exactly the state is maneuvering towards. But I see New York City essentially making it so like if you're homeless, you will just straight up be arrested for that. You don't if you don't have a fixed address. I see things like the state of California trying to make it illegal to have mobile generators, like the variety that you would have if you were living in an RV, for example. I've seen them target gas-powered stoves. It's not even necessarily just laws specifically targeting homelessness. There's also just the way that the state has been behaving around tools that would be ideal in nomadic or just generally mobile lifestyles. You know, the ideal lifestyle outside of the white market right now just things that would be suited for the norms of that economic environment, the state targeting appliances specifically that those people would use as well. It looks very clearly like deliberately targeting a specific chunk of the population because it's affecting it's when you consider those behaviors holistically, they specifically single out certain like a select range of possible lifestyles and make them impossible.
They're actively just trying to. It's more. It's like that soft power thing I was talking about earlier, where they don't make it illegal directly. They just make it very hard. They just make it like virtually impossible for people to operate outside of norms that they've created. You don't need to like make it illegal for employers to hire people. You just need to disincentivize them from it so strongly that they can't conceive of doing anything else but.
Well, one way or another, everybody's getting the memo that they hate you and want you dead. So if getting that message isn't a strong enough indicator that you probably should be looking for alternatives, I don't know what would be.
As the
Hello?
There's another thing as well, just that the as the window of acceptable activity within the context of the political economy continues to deteriorate, it's just making it more obvious what the relationship between the average person and the political class is, which is helpful, I will say.
Yeah,
I'll leave
Grambo
you guys
asked
just
about
proving your point.
Yeah, Grambo asked about what we think about the interview that we talked about earlier. Well, and I guess that's my answer to that question, what we thought about that interview. I talked about it earlier.
I mean, we kind of already talked
Feel
about
free
the Tucker
and
Carlson interview, and I even gave my thoughts on the
yeah.
Tucker Carlson interview when he initially brought it up in the back alley.
Alex Jones interviews Vladimir Putin. That would be pretty entertaining. He's like, yeah, so Vladimir, you see the chicken situation in Texas? The deep state over here is burning down these chicken plants. And then they're also importing all these people from Africa and South America and trying to starve us out. And they're, and they're eating all our goddamn chicken. What you gonna do about it?
Vladimir Putin, what are you going to do about these people coming over to eat all of our chicken?
What's up, heretic? You cut out.
I was just joking. Like, Vladimir Putin, what are you going to do about all the black people coming in from Africa to eat all the fried chicken? As though this is a problem that only Vladimir Putin was equipped to deal with.
Yeah.
Which I mean, he might be. I don't know.
Someone, hey, somebody, hey, Kizu, I see, them in chat. They were just trying to be a fucker, so they got banned. Anyway, what were you saying about? I'm surprised you were even still talking about. You were still talking about Putin, but yeah, God, I have, I have. We have to use an AI to create like an Alex Jones voice because I have it's so in so many instances of me just sitting around and like his style of rhetoric and how like I can imitate it perfectly and I have come up with some of the funniest goddamn shit. I need to make videos based on it. The deep state demons. I mean, look at them. Look like that's Alex Jones talking about talking about black people.
I can believe it.
But yeah, I gotta get I gotta get like the ability to emulate him and like his setup and everything. I could do the Infowars could come back to YouTube. Y'all want to see it? It's Infowars, but the it's gonna be in quotation marks so that I can't get sued.
No, Info Wars, but you spell wars with an ARS.
Z. You put a Z at the end. It's like a I don't know why that one got me. It's like a fucking it's like a MySpace blog from the mid 2000s.
It's fine.
Jesus Christ, that's make a like that that picture generator that like a bunch of those blogs on MySpace ran by teenage girls would use blingy make a blingy of the Infowars logo.
I don't even know what that is.
Oh god, that is that that needs to. Yeah, I don't even care if it's me that does it. That just needs to exist now because it's so goddamn funny. It's Infowars with a Z, and it's one of those blingy pictures from the mid 2000s. Oh man, I don't even remember what we were talking about. That is golden. JC saying they're surprised that doesn't already exist. It doesn't already exist because nobody's bold enough to do it, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it really should exist. What is this that is going on in Pal World?
Me about to get absolutely freaking destroyed unless I can get away. Which it looks like I am, so it's good. I think this area is a little. Oh, come on. Another one of them. Man, it looks so cool. I want to catch one, but there's also like really stronger than what I can do.
It, Alex Jones interviews Andrew Tate. So I see you've discovered a deprogramming method to get your bitches straight. That's what he says.
That is a particularly strange strain of content that Andrew Tate has found himself engaged in.
And then Andrew Tate's like, yeah, you gotta see through the matrix, and when your girlfriend mouths off to you, you gotta just bam. Gotta break the psychological conditioning and assert your dominance as the alpha male. And then Alex Jones is like, wow, that's I
Profound.
have I have insider information that confirms to me that the CIA's known about this for years. I can't
See, he's
even.
got his
God damn
he's
it! I
got
can't
his
even finish it.
references. Holy crap! I actually caught one.
Yeah, it's he's got insiders that can confirm that was one of the that was one of the lost pages of MK Ultra. It's the one that confirms beating your wife is what holds the nuclear family together.
Now, why would I not be surprised if it turns out that that's something that Alex Jones would actually try to push?
I mean, fucking the Daily Wire is just coming just shy of pushing that as is.
Are we really back to Daily
But
Wire again?
I mean, we're just memeing on fucking controlled opposition at this point, so why not?
I suppose so, yeah. I'm just trying to think, like, when is freaking what do you even say about the Daily Wire? Jesus Christ! And also, that freaking thing just popped out of the ground. Dead. I'm just going to
It's
ignore
like if it's like if the company that made Veggie Tales also ran Fox News and hated you.
it. No, I think it just. I think the company just hates their kids since it actively encourages having an actively antagonistic relationship in such a way that the only means you have to ensure a good relationship is through just pure authoritarian control techniques. So in such a way as to make sure that the kid understands that the only way to ensure that they have control over other things in their life is to assert physical dominance, because that's not going to have disastrous ramifications for them later in life whatsoever. No, definitely not. It's fine.
I saw a segment on the Jordan Peterson show because, like I've mentioned before, I'm around the Daily Wire in the background sometimes. And I saw a segment, I forgot who he was interviewing on the Jordan Peterson show that confirmed I think it was, yeah, he was interviewing Michael Malice. That's who he was talking to. And I saw a segment of him trying to talk about his perspective on the state that confirmed to me that his entire philosophy is just making incredibly basic boomer takes, but framing them using the sort of techno strategic dialogue that only academics would be familiar with so that his take sounds more sophisticated than it actually is.
Ah,
But
yes, the Hegelian tactic.
yeah, that is literally all Jordan Peterson's philosophy is, because his response to the prospect of anarchy when was brought up in the conversation was literally just the warlord's argument. But it was 5 minutes of, yeah, the sort of rhetoric that you would imagine from Jordan Peterson. It was the warlord's argument, but instead of the warlord's argument, I don't even Off the top of my head, I don't even remember the exact phrasing. It's a community of. It's funny that my attempt to impersonate Jordan Peterson sounds ironically more like Ben Shapiro. I'm not even gonna try. Uh, yeah, it's just the metaphysical substrate of humanity indicates that the substrate of metaphysical forces will have a tendency to that sort of that way of speaking. It's just that way of speaking, but explaining the warlord's argument was Jordan Peterson's response. So that
That's actually
segment
impressive.
has convinced me his entire philosophy is just boomer takes about the state, except using rhetoric that makes himself sound like an intellectual.
And that's really all it takes to impress boomers.
So political ideology's equivalent of an intellectual heavyweight is literally the retro encabulator, apparently. Which
The
you
what?
you know what you know what video I'm referring to, right?
The retro entabulator?
Oh, it's a fucking you can look it up, but it's a meme video that was created by it was a meme video that was created by engineers to make fun of overly wordy corporate presentation videos for devices that they would design. It's basically just like a 2 or 3 minute clip of using vaguely academic sounding jargon to describe conventions in engineering, but just using those words in a sequence where nothing is meaningfully described
Yeah, I think I've seen those
to
videos
describe
before.
a piece of equipment. Yeah, so that passes as intellectualism and political ideology, apparently. Because that's literally just Jordan Peterson shtick.
I don't know what to make of that, honestly. Like, I know it's not, and I know it's not like a particularly positive thing, but I just can't help but think, like, is there a way we can exploit that? Like, what does it take to get to the point where we could say basically anything and boomers would just think that we are the peak of intellectual brilliance? Like, there's got to be some way we
Well,
can
but I don't
exploit
want
this.
that.
Oh, crap.
Well, but I don't want that. I want people to. If people do come to that conclusion, it's specifically because they're able to compare their own perspective to a different perspective after being able to, not because they're just led to not just because they want that conclusion. At that point, that's just turning them into a Manchurian candidate that hates the government, and I have mixed opinions about that. I don't like it. Because the moment the government's gone, they're just back to being someone that doesn't fucking understand anything. You haven't subverted anything. You haven't replaced anything. You just made everybody psychotically angry with the government. Now it's gone and there's nothing. So something similar replaces it, and it's just psychotically angry people who fill that place. So that's the reason why you get things like the Soviet Union. Except the Soviet political economy was also it's more so the mentality behind the propaganda model that I'm referring to. The Soviet political economy was an early attempt to try to experiment with what states are setting up right now. which is a political economy that is not dependent on markets. That's basically been the holy grail of governments since they've existed. Or as Marxist states put it, a self-sufficient economy.
Yeah, sorry if I'm quiet. I'm
And
just
the reason
listening
why that's the holy
thinking about all
grail
of that.
And the reason why I compare it to the Holy Grail is because, like the Holy Grail, it's something that's fictitious, as long as basically it's possible for people to be sapient. There's always going to be a disconnect between there's always going to be a disconnect between your internal narrative of reality and environmental signals, and that will inevitably create a conflict, no matter how much overlap there is between the norms of your behavior and what those signals are pressuring you to do. Eventually you're just going to simply find yourself in a position where you want to stay in bed, for example, and you can't. A very basic way in which that sort of dichotomy emerges. And most people can tolerate it because it's not because in most instances throughout the last 100 years, those sorts of situations where where you just gradually see the white market becoming less bearable to live in hasn't amounted to anything holistically other than a first world problem. But yeah, the difference is now it's causing people to lose their houses and starve. So you shouldn't be comparing the 1990s to the modern day in terms of the implications of what problems states are operating around, because they're not operating around the same problems, so they have different factors to consider motivating which motivates their behavior.
I'm also seeing a significantly greater degree of people being aware of their relationship with the white market and just how destructive it actually is, particularly to their own lives. Like just today, I happened upon a random meme in the wild pointing out about the the problem of trying to budget finances in the white market, where people just point out, it's like, yeah, I was able to pay off all my bills on time, and I was able to save up just enough money for me to be able to afford a holiday. This budgeting this week was a success, or this budgeting this month was a success. Now all I gotta do is do that again next month, and then pray to God that I don't have any life changing events or come down with a serious illness. And I gotta be doing that for the rest of my life. Put simply, it's pointing out that people are starting to experience some kind of existential dread associated with participation in the white market, and understand that at least on some level, it's becoming actively a destructive influence in their lives. They can't quite articulate why this is, but the sheer fact that it exists at all is, at the bare minimum, interesting to me.
The fact that the norms of your environment are pressuring you to structure your entire life around retirement implies that there's basically a path being created for you that your life can follow, that you have no control over, and that people are doing this to you through social engineering that doesn't necessarily exist because it has to be there. That's basically the realization that people have had in the last 4 years, in a mass scale.
And I'm quite sure that there's a significantly more to it as well. Not to say like anything as you said is incorrect at all. Just that I feel like there's more to it. If that makes sense.
Oh, and just responding to Geo Global's comment. Yeah, by boomer, we're not referring to literally anybody who's in a specific age group. We're referring to a mentality. You're if you're talking about somebody who's in their 50s but doesn't act in the way that we're describing as far as what would be the emergent product of this mentality, and yes, we're that's not some our criticism doesn't apply to that person. Do not consider that to be something we're saying about that person. They're awesome because they're not fucking, they're not fucking Manchurian candidates.
Problem is, we do have a lot of Manchurian candidates. It'd be fantastic if they know they weren't, but unfortunately, it's not up to us. And that kind of Manchurian candidate style stuff is something that's unfortunately quite common nowadays.
It's like the Anubis not Lucario thing there. It's like a mix of the ancient Egyptian aesthetic and like I don't know what plane of them. I know that I don't know which one, so I'm not even gonna try to name it.
Well, you got three of them at this base.
Think I already fucking think I'm think I'm already pushing it with ancient Egypt instead of naming the period. But fucking the aesthetic that I'm trying to refer to. I just don't know what it's called.
I don't know either.
Off the top of my head, I don't know what that's called, but you know exactly what I'm referring to.
I want to say, I'm pretty sure someone's going to excoriate me after the stream, but I think the best term I can think of is Egypt punk.
Yeah, that's a nice way of describing it. Anyway, I'm not saying that it's not Lucario to be insulting. It's just I don't know. It's very obviously what the design is based on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. I've already made it expressly clear that I think their attitude should be yes, it is based on these character designs. That's why this game's cool or something like that. Or or you could do the take that I would probably respect the most is which would be, well, I like this project and I'm doing this project because I like it. If you don't, fuck off.
Yes,
I mean,
thinking
not
thinking the shit
necessarily.
answer.
If yeah, if they're not being pushy about it, don't necessarily tell them to fuck off. But you're not doing anything wrong in that situation, so.
I mean, in that kind of case, the fuck off response might actually be appropriate because there are people who just do need to just go away. And I'm not saying that in any threatening sense. I just mean like please just take your perfectly functional legs and use them to relocate yourself to somewhere that's not near me.
Filthy heretic says that the Chuddies should be executed.
Well, you heard it here, folks. I want him dead. I want them all dead.
Gonna go into the major cities in our trucks. We're gonna go in there with our boy kisser outfits, and then we're gonna round up all the cuties. We're gonna take them into the fields outside of town, and then we're gonna let them know that we know exactly what they are.
Uh,
All right,
is
I'm
that
just looking at
improvements?
chat
Because I
right
can get,
now.
I got a truck ready. We could get going tomorrow.
You gotta you're gonna give them shovels first when they go out to the fields, and they're gonna dig a giant hole first. You're gonna stand there with guns behind them to make sure they can't get away, and then when they dig the hole, everybody has a big giant snuggle pile inside of it.
Because that's obviously what you do in that situation.
Boy Kisser Army wins.
I think at that point you're just confusing people to death.
uh,
I mean, I think it works.
what What's your view on post space colonization, or the topic of space colonization?
Post
I
space.
think yeah, is
So,
that a different topic?
I'm just kind of curious. What is post space colonization?
I mean, it's a concept I may be familiar with, but if that's something different from space colonization, then by name, no, I'm not familiar with the concept that refers to.
I mean, I guess
The
the idea I
prospect
can
of
only
space
think of
colon
is like you're colonizing things, but you're not doing it. You're not colonizing locations on the basis of distance, but rather on the basis you're colonizing temporally.
Yeah, and that's all I was gonna say is just now on the topic of space colonization. Well, I'm gonna have to hide my power level a little bit on that topic, but I suppose what I'll say is that physics manipulation, what you'll find doing that is far more interesting than going any specific spatial direction outside of Earth.
Yeah, we've had discussions about that before, not on these streams, of course, but at some point in the future, you probably will bring this up. But yeah, being able to engage in post what is it? Yeah, in post space colonization actually isn't terribly unviable. I mean, put simply, it's like I have my bio tag thingy on Discord set to speedrun the Kardashev scale. I mean, it's basically uncontroversial that a civilization could become Kardashev 2, which means that they control all the energy in the solar system before they even leave the solar system. That's perfectly possible. So, what happens when you start to be able to move between dimensions? Basically, you can get to Kardashev 4, control all the energy in the universe without even leaving the solar system. But simply,
But even
we're doing some fun shit.
Even beginning to explain half of this shit would take like a series of streams, so it's why I don't really want to get into it. But
Yeah, I think we have to dedicate an entire
we've got
topic stream just to that.
we weren't kidding when we said that the last 3 to 4 years of us being absent is going to you're going to see that it paid off in ways that even we didn't imagine going in. It is the project I've invested the most in out of pretty much anything that I've done in my life, hands down, and it's been the most, as far as what I've gotten out of it, it's been the most satisfying as far as results so far. just as far as how I personally feel. And this is relating to just everything we've been doing behind the scenes over the last 3 years at this point. I'm just thinking out loud about it and talking with Heretic. What do you think, Heretic?
Oh, still got a lot. I'm a bit more results oriented, but a lot of the stuff that we have found is to. I really do want to understate it, but I do think it's fair to say that what has been found is quite interesting. The only real problem here is that a lot of what we have found is difficult to communicate for the simple fact of a lack of proof of work. Even if we were to write down absolutely
Yeah,
everything, which we definitely could, it would be
we will.
like we don't have enough proof. I think it's the best way to put it.
Yeah, the goal here, like to clarify, we're not sitting here like the goal here is not to claim special knowledge or anything. Like we're at the point now where we're just finishing everything. That's and that's the point is we need we're just kind of doing streams and writing essays slowly with the channel because well, what we're doing in the background is fun, but we kind of I don't know our big things have been happening and our expectations kind of it's a lot to explain and it's not even really the kind of thing that really should be talked about beyond this on stream anyway. But I guess just point is, well, if you're interested in what we'll be doing in the future for its implications with regarding the nature of the state's relationship to society, well, at some of the things that we had to study following certain rabbit holes was it led to some interesting places, let's just put it like that. uh yeah, absolute. It's not really something that it's not really a matter of revealing it or not. It's more so creating for creating formal proof and also finishing certain things that we know we can make. That's kind of where we are.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very good case to be made that. I mean, I hesitate to call it an entirely new field of research, but that's kind of what it feels like sometimes. And I also another
God, I
reason
hate
I
it.
hesitate to say it's a new field of research is because it's actually really really old.
God, I fucking hate this so much because it's almost impossible to talk about it at this point where you don't sound like such a bullshitter, but we are telling you that that all of the you know what don't take our word for it. See the formal proof when it's done, I guess is the point that I'm trying to make. Like we're not asking you to trust us. What we're saying is that there's something we know exists and can prove it, but we haven't written formal proof yet. And that kind of puts us in an awkward position where right now the only way it can even be meaningfully talked about is like this. So I'm sorry, but that's it will come up from time to time because of it some of the things we talk about unavoidably pointed out by implication, and we kind of just have to stop following those chains of reasoning. But I assure you that that will not be permanent when it does happen. Anyway, Anybody in chat want have any questions? Want to talk about anything? Because we're going on 2.5 hours, and we talked about anything that we wanted to bring up originally. So yeah, Geo Global. It's a unique position I'm not used to being in, and I hate it. I'm so if this is a really common thing among people that actually are like that are actually trying to do research. Good God, I hate. I gives me another reason to hate the freaking philosophical movements promoted by academia. Because God doesn't make it stressful. But anyway, you have anything to say, Heretic?
Not really. I was just pointing out that I'm just trying. I'm still just trying to figure out like what our proof of work would even look like. Like we can just like write a formal essay, as a lot of people have been suggesting we do. Like not even a formal essay, but just like
I
a what would be the proper term? Because a lot of the stuff we've talked about could fit into a freaking book, like a full feature length book.
Well, that's basically what my plan was throughout the spring, and I don't really want to put a prognosis on how long it'll take me, but that's what my plan was, is I was going to wherever I end up being, I was going to start writing it. And I was going to talk with you guys about like it's just going to be a collection of essays that together you know deconstruct the conventional ways that these phenomena are thought of and why what we're claiming is valid has to be the correct representation of its nature. See you, Grambo. Is the thing I'm just looking at the chat? Is it working on about it's I'd say it's more so really I'd say it's not really relating to any specific uh can't even say that. Damn it. It's yeah, if I'm floundering here, it's because I'm struggling to find ways of phrasing something that I know how to express, but I am put in a very weird situation where I have to be very careful about how I describe it. Or I could just not talk about it. I guess it just depends on which one you guys prefer at this point. Yeah, I'm becoming just responding to your most recent comment, Geo Global. I am becoming increasingly convinced that what a lot of people are describing as quote unquote autism. First of all, I'm not denying that that is an actual condition, so don't misunderstand. But that what a lot of people are being diagnosed with as quote unquote autism is just people developing norms of behavior that make them difficult for their teachers to deal with. Tell me I'm fucking wrong.
I
Look
don't
at
think you.
any special ed class in like a high school or middle school. Half of the kids there very clearly do not have any do not have any they're not insensible. They're just there because of the fact that they like playing games a little too much instead of and it makes it so they don't want to sit there and listen to lectures like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Those are the people that actually do think for themselves, actually are creative. And I remember actually being part of those classes. First off, it was always a free period where you could basically just do homework and not have to do it at home, which is always a perk. And secondly, like it was an excuse to get out of classes for remedial classes. I didn't perceive any kind of humiliation from it. It just sort of, for me, it was just a, oh hey, I get to get out of class, sweet kind of deal. And the other people that were with me, like without exception, they were all quite cool. Like just normal people that you could just do hang out and do stuff with. There wasn't anything like particularly, for want of a better term, sped about them.
They're not. They were sensible, or they at the very least they were able to act in such a way where like they could practically act around other people. And to clarify, we're not saying that like problems with like that mental conditions, we're not saying they don't exist. It's just that what we're saying is that a lot of people, when they are diagnosed with what is being described as autism, both the implications of what it means to receive a diagnosis from a psychiatrist and how psychiatry treats autism suggests that when you look at this trend in behavior from the perspective of the organizational interests that the state would have, that it's being used as a tool to discriminate against people who develop norms of behavior that make it difficult for them to be wages. And it's not that it's not that there aren't legitimate problems that are being classified as like as conditions, but as these conditions according to psychiatry, it's not that they aren't describing legitimate problems, it's that the way psychiatry attempts to describe this phenomena isn't accurate, but also that psychiatry is just used as a pretext to attack people for doing things that the state doesn't like it doing. And sometimes that is legitimately psychotic, but in most cases, it's just people having too many questions about police searching them, or it's people who don't want to sit still in class. In the case of most people who are diagnosed with ODD and ADHD. Not denying that ADHD describes a condition that exists, it's just not a fucking mental disorder. There's nothing wrong with you. The state is just trying to make you feel like there's something wrong with you because you need to sit still in order in order for their model of education to work.
To this day, I've still never received any kind of explanation as to what ADHD is supposed to be other than the state stigmatizing people who have different norms of behavior that just disagree with teachers. That seems to be the only thing wrong with them, to the extent that there's anything wrong at all, which I don't think there is.
Even even as a teenager, I heard ODD for the first time, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm mentally ill now for questioning the teacher, right?" Like that one was a bit too on the nose even for me as a kid to not raise an eyebrow in response to seeing. I just straight up am going to say ODD doesn't exist. It's not a condition. It's something the state made up because it doesn't like people questioning them.
I mean, that one's pretty on the nose just by the name. Like, there's literally nothing else it could be other than just the state actively trying to create some mental, or try to
Oh, I
associate a
was
mental condition with people not being willing to put up with their nonsense.
I was diagnosed with ODD because I got in fights with police. Yeah, and look at what convincing yourself that that was a look at where that led you. Now you have a fucking opiate addiction and you're comfortable being a wagey. Yeah, are you the one are you the one that was delusional, or are the people who literally are expecting you to take drugs in order to cope with the life they're trying to force onto you? Are they the ones who are fucking crazy?
I mean, to me, it
Well,
seems pretty straightforward.
considering Yeah, considering that there are many instances where the norms that they try to socially engineer into being in our societies actively require you, if you were to take their pretext for justifying their existence at face value, actively require you to make claims about phenomena in nature that are just factually inaccurate. If that wasn't a dead giveaway that it's not about you, well, the fact that you need to be drugged in order to bear with it, with the lifestyle that they try to steer you towards, should be your biggest red flag.
Should at that point demonstrate that it's not exactly useful, or at the very least questionable.
I got diagnosed with ODD and I stopped questioning cops. Yeah, that's the point. It's to make you think that that's a problem.
The cops aren't the problem, the teachers aren't the problem, only you are the problem, and don't ever question what it is that makes you the problem. I mean, I'm still, I'll never get over the existence of sluggish schizophrenia as a diagnosis being unironically pushed for in the Soviet Union. Back in the day, the only reason that you were critical of the Stalin regime was because you were schizophrenic. But the reason you didn't have any actual schizophrenic symptoms was because you just didn't have it yet. So they called it sluggish. See,
How
we don't need any
archaic
stands of
and
proof.
out
We just have to claim.
how archaic and outdated. I'm glad that states aren't doing that nowadays. Now anyway, you need to get some antipsychotics for your ODD because that's a gateway condition to finding alt-right circles, and that'll make you crazy and turn you into a school shooter. You got to be institutionalized if you don't.
Freaking, I just can't help but think that I don't know if this is actually the case, but I do genuinely get the impression that wildlife has a greater degree of legal privilege than kids.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you kill them something I was I was gonna say I was gonna like make a joke if you kill them something actually happens to you, but then it fucking that made me picture, oh my God, just imagine that. Don't imagine that being a norm. I'm not even going to like facetiously describe that, but just states try to socially engineer that into being.
Look, all I'm saying is that
It's
if you're
population control.
if you go on social media and you talk about shooting wildlife, the government won't give you guns.
It's the new population control effort. You put kids, you take all of the kids from the poorest region of the country and you bring them to the Capitol building and you put them in a stadium with basically just the plot of the Hunger Games. That's how we deal with the overpopulation, quote unquote.
Is that Donald Trump's new April 2024 proposal of how to deal with the homeless problem?
That's the and that's specifically what the U.S. government does about it. It's, it's the Hunger Games. It's like that fucking George Carlin skit, except it actually happens. Where like two states are just evacuated, and then everybody of a certain type of prisoner is just taken and put in that state, and that's where everybody that did that it lives and is located.
Yeah, seems about right. Don't really think there's much of a difference in terms of how people be treated, though, unfortunately.
All right. Just looking at the chat still, I suppose. See if there's anything else any of you guys would like to talk about before we go in the last 10 minutes or so. How do we get meat food in How do we get meat food in Pokemon? Yeah, what? It makes me wonder, like, what nourishment in that universe must be like. Do their berries just have like meat in them? They have meat berries.
I mean, that's actually funny because early on in the like in the I think in the first Pokemon game, a few of the Pokedex entries did imply that they had a food chain, and even in the Pokemon anime for like the first season, there's a scene of Brock and Ash daydreaming over a fillet Magikarp, which implied that humans did eat Pokemon, like very strongly so. That's kind of stopped, and it's basically been confirmed at this point that Pokemon are sapient, so that just won't fly.
So then in the first season of Pokemon, there's just this elephant in the room of Brock and Ash having a fantasy about cooking and eating what in that universe is a sapient being.
Yeah,
And like they know for sure that it is a sapient being and just don't care. And it's a funny moment played off for goofs, I'm sure.
I mean, I think it's an example of early installment weirdness in addition to retconning. I mean, it's like,
Because if you think about the implications of that, that's like that would mean that they're like Ed Gein fucked up in the head.
I mean, you're just kind of at the point
Like
where
in the context of that universe.
you're kind of just at the point where your entire
I mean, it's already fucked up that certain Pokemon in like the Pokédex even like have their entries say that they eat other Pokemon.
I did not know that, but hey Doug. Anyway, Heretic was saying something.
yeah.
Oh, sorry,
So I don't know about like specific
the stream already
recent
ended.
examples.
Always
Well, certain interactions are like known to be talked about in the Pokedex. The actual examples I can think of uh, Pokemon eating other Pokemon, don't really know much about that. Sure, it exists. I just don't know where it is. But it wouldn't. But realistically, there should be a food chain. That said, you're talking about like
yeah, it's
you're talking about anim- magical sapient animals that can shoot lasers out of their butts. So
they decided that they couldn't show the Magikarps being filleted, so what they did is they made it so when meat would appear in the Pokemon universe, it would be presented in the form of berries, and berry bushes would be planted everywhere, but they're quote unquote berry bushes, and those are actually just the the gourmet meaty remains of somebody's friend.
The worst part is that berry Pokemon exist.
And they're necessary because they, just like in our world, there is a chemical necessary in your brain that you can only get from eating Pokemon.
My God.
I mean, it's like in the seventh day, Arceus created man to have dominion over all the Pokemon.
Arceus also made it so man would experience withdrawal symptoms if he didn't specifically eat other Pokemon. Arceus is the one Pokemon where this is not true about its meat, therefore it is exempt.
Well, that's because no one's ever tried to eat Arceus before. Now, it might be just one of those situations where it's like you dismember, like you rip off one of Arceus's legs, you take it out, and you're wondering why Arceus isn't crying out in pain. Not only is he's not crying out in pain because he doesn't have a mouth, because he obviously doesn't have a mouth, but he's not crying in pain because there's just another leg there. Like, you take off the leg, there's still a leg. So you try to take it off again, you just keep ripping off legs. He's basically just an infinite food source.
The insiders in the deep state told me that, that I know the real reasons that's motivating Arceus and make Alex Jones talking about the lore behind gods in the Pokemon universe. It's like in the style of one of his rants.
Deep
And that
state
I can't
insiders
even
talking about the real story of
Arceus
Arceus and Giratina.
talking talking about the deep state insiders talking about how much Justin RPG loves restaurant.
This is normal. This is normal. Don't worry.
This is such a terminally online conversation at this point.
Oh, this is actually the exact kind of conversations I think our viewers are most excited for.
I know,
This is what they
and
tuned
it's
into.
the kind of the conversations I enjoy having the most on stream. So I hope so.
Just pure nonsense and trying to hypothetically imagine. I mean, we don't have to imagine what's his name, Terry A. Davis would be like in a Pokemon game because Pokemon Clover exists.
It's not nonsense though, because we give informed takes about actual events. It's like the perfect middle ground between a podcast like Last American Vagabond, but with the style of humor of like Oni Plays. It's
Yeah,
the perfect middle ground, and that's the new Backalley.
there we go.
At least that's the feel that I'm getting out of the way that our streams have been turning out. It's not really something that I'm like aiming towards, but I love that they're turning out that way because I love that style.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good style. However, I do think that it'll be an ongoing process of improvement as we try to refine it, and it'll end up being that in a bit of time, later podcasts will just something will change gradually over time, and the quality of presentation will just improve as we figure out better ways to convey information, be able to be able to get more insight off of weekly events, and sometimes not even weekly events.
The
Because like
geo
we brought up the homeless thing, and that was inspired by an article that came around April of last year.
Just responding to Geo Global, your most recent comment. First of all, we're not claiming autism exists because of the environment. We're saying that it's treated like a problem because of the fact that, to the extent that it actually is describing a real, like, an actual mental condition, like it's describing the condition that people think of when they refer to autism, and not someone who is called autistic because they cause the same problem for their teacher that an autistic person would. Um, but yeah, first of all, there's a lot of people that are diagnosed as autistic just for that reason. But also, what I'm saying is it's treated as a problem because of norms that have to exist in most economic models that are required to maintain the state. So it's not the extent to which there is an actual condition there doesn't exist. It's that it wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't for the fact that people who are maintaining the state need that to be otherized within the context of norms that they socially engineer into being.
They need
No,
to
no, no, no,
leave
no.
them
It's
alone with
not
their
ranty, or
nonsense.
it's not ranty or whiny. Autism doesn't exist is a bit of a take. So if you think that if that was what you took away, I think it's important to clarify that's not what we're saying. Because if someone actually has a mental handicap, and I'm describing it as a handicap, not as an insult, but because practically that's sort of how you would have to treat it. You shouldn't just treat them like they don't fucking have it, because it's gonna mess them up mentally.
I mean, them
You
attempting
know,
to treat it like it doesn't
I'll
exist
just
is kind of where you end up with a lot of situations to begin with. A lot of these situations to begin with.
yeah, and I'm not gonna get too into it, but take it from experience that that's the case. That's what happens. Anyway, exactly. Just Geo. That's I wish more people would do that, even if even if what they are presenting is a bit of a take. Just why within your internal reasoning that conclusion emerged. If you actually have the ability to explain that, just presenting that to another person, that the reaction that you're having right now is exactly how both like what the takeaway will be, and that's because essentially all major disagreements just boil down to a disagreement in metaphysical rules. So if you have different rules that the other person is operating around, if they just present to you their rules instead of their conclusion, you can just see why their conclusion emerges. So even if you don't come to the same conclusion, you know why they did. So you don't just look at them like there's somebody who thinks the same thing that you do, but is just being irritating.
I agree with that assessment. Like I find myself personally, whenever I'm in a discussion with someone and they reach the same conclusion, I'm always questioning why did you reach the same conclusion I did. Just simply because I have had so much experience with people who reach similar conclusions to me, but for completely wrong reasons. And I want to make sure that if even if I can't reach the same conclusion they did from their rule set, I can at least understand where they came from, which to me is quite important. I define understanding as the ability to simulate something within my own mind, and if I have the rule set, then I can perform that simulation.
Yeah, and if you have different metaphysical rules that have different implications to compare your own to, that's literally one of the most important. That's the first step towards autodidactic thinking, because that's what's required in order for meaning to exist in general, is for information and perception to meet. But anyway, I think that yeah, no problem, Geo Global. But yeah, I think that we've wrapped up this stream. Unless there was anything else that you wanted to say, Heretic, because we finished up everything we wanted to talk about.
No, I think we're good. I think we're good for the time being. Uh, I'm just trying to. Right now, I am just trying to think. What the hell can we expect next week?
Yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see. I'm just writing in chat our Discord.
All right.
Our Discord usernames if anyone wants to send us an invite after the stream, if they're looking for access to the Backalley Discord server. Feel free to message us through our DMs. Other than that, sorry if towards the end of the stream there was a bit more thought buffering, but I started winding down a bit towards the end.
Yeah. Likewise.
Yeah, sure.
What's up?
Sorry, what were you gonna say? Just responding to Geo Global. If you want an invite to the server, just add either Heretic or I on Discord, and we'll send you an invite after you DM us. But anyway, what we're gonna say, sorry.
I wasn't really gonna say anything. Just that. Yeah, not really anything. If you want to.
All right, thank you guys for. Fuck.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, well, if you guys, I guess stay tuned because the streams are just going to progressively get more and more interesting. We're going to be doing more and more things every stream, or we'll be doing something new every stream. Have somebody on every stream. Well, at a certain, not every stream, but that's something that could be new that we start doing, talking with people. Yeah, and then on top of that, got stuff going on as far as essays. Lot of stuff, lot of stuff. Not exactly sure how we should prioritize all of it, but anyway, we'll see you guys next week.